So before we get started, I have to sort of admit something to you. This is a game conference, and I think I might be the only one up here that's not speaking from the game industry. So I was a hardcore gamer, though, at one point, and I peaked Christmas morning, 1991. Santa brought me that Game Gear, and I was super excited about Sonic. I think I played it every day for about a year, shortly after I did retire. With that said, I just want to let all of you know that I do have the same amount of love for the entire algorithmic software, everything there, as all of you do. So, who am I, really? Hi, my name is Nikie Monteleone. I am currently a surfacing artist at DreamWorks Animation Television. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, and animation is your jam, come follow me. I'm on there all the time, and I really only talk about animation. So a little bit about me. I first attended the Maryland Institute College of Art. I ended up declaring a fibers major, and the definition of that to me is it was the study of the surfaces of things that go on the body. And I wasn't introduced to CG until like my senior year. I had that stereotypical story, sitting around with a bunch of friends, watching Toy Story, and there's this dinosaur on the screen that has a pattern on him. Oh my God, who put that pattern on the dinosaur? That's what I want to do. I love surfaces of things, but okay, yep, that's it. I can see the side, I can see the front, I can see the back, it's taking light. It's on this character that's like super animated and super fun. That's it. That's what I want to do. Any sort of CG integration into my fibers major at that time was sort of discouraged. And so I graduated and I did a bunch of like odd and ends things, like art department PA. I was a gallery assistant. I made my way into prints and patterns. I was a senior graphic designer and like some, super high-end professional New York City, like, okay, yeah, no. I was in New York City, and I hadn't had my Rex moment in a while, and like I felt super suffocated as a creative artist, and I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do. So I saved up as much money as I could, and I went back to school. I took a couple of continuing education classes at SVI. Shout out to my instructor, Alex Sheparev, who stayed all the way till the end. There were only 2 of us left. And I'm about to embarrass myself one more time. Here's what I ended up making. My very humble beginnings. Look at that robot go. He's jumping on a makeup compact, which I don't know why. But that's what I ended up making. I had 9 weeks, and so I have this thing. Now what do I do with it? I freelanced some more. I finally found a company in Connecticut that would take me in as an intern. I had the most amazing mentor there, Jay Garrison. He taught me everything that I know. He made me a true generalist at that studio. My husband ended up getting a job in Portland, Oregon, and so we moved out there, and I was able to sneak in somehow at the commercial division of Leica. At Leica, I was introduced to Substance Painter, and I had my Rex moment at Leica. I opened up Substance Painter, I put, some whatever creature I was making at the time, and oh my God, here's this creature that I can see my pattern on this thing. There's light going around it. I can mess with it like on like I can paint the speck at the same time as I'm painting the diffuse, and I don't have to worry about like, oh, a black and white map, and oh, I think like 90% of gray is this glossy or whatever it is. I'm actually doing it in the viewport. And so it was like, okay, yep, this is my program. This is what I want. I'm gonna start using Substance Painter for everything. So I just made personal work a priority because it was fun again. Here are 3 of my personal pieces that I ended up making, I think in the last year or so, that I'm going to talk about after. So here we go. Cool, thank you. So just a quick shout out, the last 2, the Wizard's Living Room and the Greenie Genie were both all female collaborations, and I'm super excited about that part. Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Nita Tarasova is the modeler of the genie. Ali White did the beautiful illustration. Jane Wang modeled Julia Blattman's Austin Howell's Moving Castle inspired Wizard's Living Room. So check those ladies out. They're in the industry and they are super talented, and I am super humbled to have been able to work with them on those 2 projects. So let's get started. What do you need first to start a project? You need reference, and you need real world reference. And yeah, you might think, oh, I know what gold looks like. I'm just gonna put a gold thing on here. No, go find yourself some reference. Take pictures outside. Go find your, Google's free. Take as many pictures as you can. Find as much reference as you can. It's going to be super helpful in the end. I'm one of those people who I think I probably have over like 10,000 photos on my phone, and maybe like 1 or 5 are selfies, but most of them are fire hydrants and sidewalks and just like grungy stuff. And that's actually my second account at I Love Texture, because I love texture. And so, I started this account just so that I could document everything that I see in the real world. And yeah, even if you're texturing some like ugly sci-fi ogre, there's going to be stuff about that asset that's going to need real world reference. So yes. Next, Substance Share. I have been using Substance Share for a really long time, and shout out to, sorry if I'm butchering your name, I really did try to find out, Chris Narty. His skin shader, I use it all the time. It's super easy to use. It's all driven by the mesh maps that you already have to bake when you open up a project. There's like some curvatures and some procedural skin pores. It's really awesome. Substance Source is a really, really awesome resource for me. And not only because there's all these free materials that you can download, but I can send this link to my art director. I can send the Substance source link to my producer, to my coworkers. Hey, you said you wanted some wood, you know, on this thing, and the design team is too busy. Maybe you could just put wood into Substance source and tell me which type of wood you want. Give me a couple of the things that you're thinking of. Visual reference over words is always better with creatives anyway. Myself, I don't know about you guys, but I would always prefer to have an image over, oh, just give me wood. Next, you've got your reference, you have your model, you have maybe some like UVs laid out if you're lucky or the modeler gave you some. Texel density, as it says up there, are my two favorite words after shoes, chocolate, and cheese. True story. They are the most important part of my process. Procedurals rely heavily on textile density if you're going to be painting in Painter. And yes, I know there's triplaners, but you can't use those all the time. And I'm basically doing my job so that Painter can help me do my job when it's doing its job. That makes sense. So what do I mean by textile density? Here's the genie, and her body was spread over 3 Udem patches. And I want to make sure that from her toe to her knee to her elbow to everything on her body, I want, when you're looking in the viewport, I want every single checkerboard pattern to be exactly the same. So if you're gonna put a procedural pore shader on there, you don't have to go in and like, you know, duplicate it, put a mask on it, kind of match it a little bit. That's too much guesswork, and it is super easy to get textile density. I prefer Maya's UV toolkit only because I have a copy of Maya and it is free for me to use. I know there are plenty of other UV things, you know, software out there, and you can use what you want to use. So anyway, in Maya's UV toolkit, you have to navigate to the transform tool, or transform tab, sorry. And all the way down at the bottom where it says textile density, all you have to do is grab all your shells. So basically grabbing all the shells of the body, you hit get and you hit set. Voila, you have textile density on whatever shells you have selected. So just one last example. I knew that I wanted to put this bull leather on all of the books in the wizard's living room. So I basically, and thank you to the modeler for only making like 3 or 4 of those books so that I could transfer the UVs. But I knew that I wanted to go in and like hand paint. Maybe I wanted to put some art on one cover, and I wanted to hand paint the spines of all of the books. So nothing is overlapped. So all I had to do here, once I had my UVs, all I had to do was hit get, hit set, and now I have UVs. And then I did also hit the layout button, which I think is all the way down at the bottom, to pack them in. And I could put that bull leather on there, and it was perfectly fine. It looked fine with one layer. So now, okay, we have reference, we have our model, you have perfect textile density. Now let's actually lay out the UVs. It is efficient in Substance Painter to group like materials inside of the same texture sets for a few reasons. One, it keeps the scene tidy. We all have coworkers, and they might need to go into your file at some point. If you've got skin in one texture set and you have fabric in the other texture set, it's going to be super easy for them to go in and like make a little update for you, or you know, whoever has to make that update. So it's just a clean way of working. 2, it saves on memory to have less textures in a texture set. So say you have skin in one Udem patch, oh, you have skin in another Udem patch, I'm sorry, a texture set, same thing. And then you have clothes also in those texture sets. You're gonna have to either instantiate your layers over, or you're gonna have to copy paste them over. And it's just a lot of layers for things that you just don't need. So try to keep them, all your like materials in the same texture set. And lastly, for instance, on the genie, I knew that I had glassy eyes, and I wanted to be able to hit the render button in Iray to see what it looked like. You can go in on that texture set and say, hey, add opacity to this texture set so that I can say, you know, these eyes have opacity, but I don't need to add opacity to the rest of her because that was the only spot on her that needed it. So just a couple of other UV layout tips. Orientation for the leaves. After getting the TEXEL density out of those leaves, I wanted to make sure that the tops of the leaves are all pointing upward. Why am I doing that? That's crazy. Because the watercolor brush that I knew I wanted to use has a rectangular alpha. And so if I have leaves that are oriented like, you know, 90 degrees or up and down or whatever they are, I'm gonna have to keep on rotating that brush while I'm in Substance Painter. It's gonna take me all day to just do the leaves, and I don't want to do it all day. So all I had to do, start from the bottom, couple strokes, couple strokes, couple strokes, and I was done, I don't know, probably 20 minutes or so. Same thing for the shingles. I made sure that the tops of the shingles were at the top and they were just in nice, neat little rows so that I could put a fill layer on top. I think I either put it on like multiply or overlay. I added a mask and I took the gradient linear tool and I literally just stroked across until I was done. Again, that probably took me like 10 minutes. The paper, small detail, but there are 4 shells there. There are 2 pieces of paper. So I needed a shell for the top and a shell for the bottom. And then again, for the second one, a shell for the top, a shell for the bottom. What I did is I took that paper into the UV editor and I unitized it. That is gonna take every single face that's there and make it exactly 1-to-1 same. So now that you have all of your faces unitized, you're going to cut the edges of the paper, invert that, and then weld all of the inner edges together. So now you have these perfect laid out shells that you can go in right on. You can put a procedural pattern on there, and the procedural is not going to be all messed up because if you were to take that paper into the UV editor and unwrap it as is, it's gonna look crazy. So, this might be a little crazy, and I know it's, you know, you don't have to do this in a pipeline, but for me, I like to UV, I like to make sure my scene is tidy, I like to know where things are. So, I laid out everything down at the bottom, that's all the woods. You can see the shingles there that we were just talking about is on that second patch. All the fabrics are on the next row. You can see the rug and the chair backs. The next one, it was all the metals. You can see that big pipe there is probably the one that's on the left. All the gears are on that second patch. All the organic stuff, food and plants, was on the next row. And all the ceramics and glass was up at the top. And what I was just talking about before with the glass, those last 2 patches are the ones that I could go in and say, hey, I want opacity on these 2 pieces. So they're on their own texture sets, and I can go in and adjust the opacity. I don't need to worry about adjusting opacity for everything else. So you have your reference, you have your model, you have perfect TEXEL density, you have everything laid out. Now we're gonna open up Substance Painter and we're gonna set up the project so that it is useful for you and it plays nice with your computer. So you're gonna go and you're gonna open up the preview options. You need to tell Substance how much memory to use. So by default there, it says 2000. This is your local cache directory. So all of your thumbnails and your alphas, like everything that is in the program without you opening up a project. So you go and you download like 100 substances, you need somewhere to put that cache. And 2000 megabytes is it's a lot, but I think I probably have mine on like 80,000, or I don't know. I just keep going until everything loads like that. The next one you want to do is define your cache directory. So this is, now you have a project open, and you need somewhere to store your cache. So this is straight from the Allegro website. It's recommended to set the cache directory on a solid state drive to ensure the best performances while working with Substance Painter. So by default, I left that there for you so that you could see where it is. It's usually like on your C drive, but I've got mine on a solid state drive so that Substance works just a little bit better. And lastly, I live in Southern California. It's like 100 degrees all the time. And when I first moved there, my God, my computer was crashing like every day, and I couldn't understand why. It was overheating, and I'm a little cheap with the AC, so I got myself a temperature gauge instead. This is MSI Afterburner. It's free, which is the best part. And there's a little icon there, a little setup button, and you can just go and tell it to work a little harder, to make your fans work a little bit harder so that Substance Painter will continue to work and your GPU will not overheat. So this is a really quick one, but I learned maybe the hard way a couple of times to not do this. If you've got 29 UDEMs, texture sets, like I did for the Wizard's Castle, I went in and I was like, oh, well, I have a pretty okay computer. I'm going to put everything on 4K to start with. Oh, yeah, see, you guys know. So when you say new project, that document resolution is by default on 1024. I put it down to 512. I'm like, I'm just gonna work on one texture set at a time. So I think maybe to the, like what that's good for, so you have one ginormous road and it's 29 UDEMs. You can sit and work on one patch and instantiate that patch to every other UDEM tile that you have there. Keep those tiles on 512, keep your one patch on 4K, and when you're ready to export, you can export everything at 4K. You don't ever even need to go up from 512 unless you really want to see them in the viewport. So next, we've got our model. We have UVs, we have everything laid out, we have ZBrush is there. We have Substance Painter open, and everything is gonna work for you perfectly, right, on the first time. So I want to talk a little bit about baking. Normals information. So baking height information from a high-res mesh. You're going to export something, something like from ZBrush. Substance will bake these for free. There's no need to bring in a high-density mesh to Substance Painter. So for my Chameleon, I brought in the 37,000 face count into Substance Painter. And the Chameleon that's on the right-hand side, that's a screen capture from ZBrush. That was 45 million polygons. That's not that much these days. So here are, after bringing in the high-res mesh, here are all of the maps that I was able to utilize and use some procedurals by using these different things as masks. So super easy, couple of quick tips while you're baking. Over on the left, adding high-res mesh. You're gonna click on that little, was that like a paper icon? You're gonna bring in your high-res mesh there. Make sure it says _high. And then make sure your low-res mesh says _low, and everything should work. If you, so with my Chameleon, it was okay for me to have contact AO on the branch because I wasn't animating anything. But say I wanted to have him wave hi to the camera. I don't want contact AO on the branch. So you're gonna go to two separate places. You're gonna first go to thickness, where it says self-occlusion, and you're gonna say only same mesh name. And then the second place you're gonna go is ambient occlusion and only same mesh name. And do not forget, you are working on texture set 1001, probably by default. If you do not hit apply to all and you sit and you send off a bake, it is not going to apply to all, it's only going to apply to 1001. So don't forget to hit apply to all anytime you make a change, should you want it to apply to all. Yeah? Good? You guys are good? All right, just checking. Okay, let's see, fills versus layers. I talked to a lot of Substance Painter users, and some are like, oh, I only use layers, and some are like, oh, I only use paint layers, and man, why just not use both? There's a time and a place. So when is it a good time to use fills, and when is it a good time to use layers? There's no right or wrong answer. I mostly use fill layers, but there are definitely awesome times to use paint layers. Fill layers have more procedural options, while painting and projecting on a layer is pretty finite. But I did just watch an awesome tutorial that just went on the Allegorithmic website like, I don't know, a week or two ago. If you paint, apparently this works, I haven't tried it myself, but if you paint an alpha and you close the project and you come back to it later and I want to use a different alpha, you can just go and swap the alpha with the resources updater, which I think is pretty awesome. So it's no longer extremely finite. But yeah, watch that tutorial because it is really cool. And if anybody is not aware with the resources updater, a lot of things on, there's like a couple Substance Painters back, a lot of things needed to get updated, and you will actually see in parentheses outdated on your shaders and some like HDRs, some there's a couple of things. So all you have to do is open up the resource updater. It's like a little icon that's on the left-hand side by default, and hit update all, and it updates for you. So I'm just gonna run through really quick on the layers for the Chameleon. This was the base mask, and I used the curvature mesh map that was baked out by default. I just made like a brown fill, put a mask over it, and made another fill and put the curvature in it, and this is what I get by default. I inverted it, blurred it a little bit so that it didn't look like super CG, and then I had to go in and do like a little bit of paint cleanup with some artifacting that was like left over inside some of the scales. So that's what that mask ends up looking like at the end of the day, with a couple of, it wasn't too bad, maybe like 45 minutes worth of work of just cleaning it up. Base fills. So I like to add what I like to call fixed fill layers. I've noticed over the last couple of years using Substance Painter and also having to hit the render button. I use Maya with Arnold. That if you've got any of your channels, like if you turn a channel off and you end up exporting out some of your maps and there's like some weird alphas in there or some transparency in there, your render is not going to look good. It's going to look incorrect. So just down at the bottom, I like to add a couple of like fix fill layers, and sometimes I don't use them, but fill layers are not really making my my project any bigger. And there is the base paint, and that's the paint that everybody says I'm crazy for, but it didn't take too long, and it was symmetrical around the body, not on top of the head or the tail, but it was fun, and it was a personal project, so I enjoyed doing it. So this is a paint layer, and it's just got a HSL filter on it to make it a little bit more saturated because I love color. The gums, was just a smart material that I made from the tongue. It's just driven by, I think, just a curvature map. There's probably a cloud bump in there, and I might have gone in with like a paint layer. I usually like to do a white on overlay and then a black on overlay, and maybe it's only ever on like 15 or 20%, but it's just like a highlight that makes it look a little bit nicer. And I also like the painterly feel of actually painting on it. I love procedurals too, but I love to also paint. And then here's everything, the details. I added just a little tiny bit of bump, which is procedural. I overlaid a lime color with one of the generator masks just to give it a little bit of dirt. And then there's the final output. And while I have this open, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how I made the branch. I did not fully make that in Substance Painter. And my plans have been foiled a little bit from this morning and the whole alchemist drop that apparently we are no longer using BITMAP to material. But this is for my legacy users, and I don't know, I'll probably still use it too. So really quick, and I'm not going to go over this for very long because I know we're getting rid of it, but all I did was I found this tiled texture online, and you're going to do exactly what it says. Drop a bitmap here. And it's just a diffuse color photo that I found, so it's going to be my main input. So there it is on a square. I mean, there's, if you're not using metal rough, you can change it to spec glossy. You can change here, you can put tessellation on just like you can in Substance Designer. You can output your sizes here. There's up to 4K. My favorite spots though are literally there's a make it tile button. How cool is that? All right, so now it's tiled. You can play with the normals in here. There is a light cancellation slider. So if you've got diffuse in there, you can take that out. Or I'm sorry, if you have like a spec highlight, you can take that out. And then I do also like to come down and maybe like add some grunge, which, you know, in Alchemist, you're gonna be able to do like all of this times 100, which I'm super excited about. But for now, here's what I've got. So say you are super happy with this. This is the output that you want. I have some saved out already just for time's sake. And I am going to just apply this to everybody's favorite character, Meet Matt. Yay, look at him, he's so cute. All right, so I've got these 5 that I need. I need the roughness, I need the normal, I need the metallic, height, and base color. Those are the 5 channels by default that are gonna come with your shader, metallic roughness shader. I'm gonna come say texture, texture, texture. I want it to only be in my meat mat. I don't want to add it to my shelf. Import. I'm going to go into projection mode. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to add, oh wait, no, layer. Okay, a layer. And here are all those places where we're going to stick these. So this one is roughness and normal. Come on. And looks black, but let's use it anyway. So we are mathematically correct. And height. And the base. There we go. Okay, so now we're ready. And you'll have to excuse me, I am not used to using a mouse. I'm just gonna come and project this over top. Oh, look at that. He has a bark head going. Say that's what I wanted. We can pretend. So then, I mean, all this stuff is still saved in here. Oh, you know, there's like a seam somewhere I can come in and just like paint out the seam if I want. Get, you know, here it is. And I'm painting. So this is, you know, this is my Rex moment. I'm painting this whole entire thing together. I don't have to worry about black and white maps. And it's awesome. So that is how I did the branch. All right. So like we just said, it's going to generate all of those maps for you from one single image. Here are the maps that I used. And then also just another quick thing too, the UVs on the branch, I didn't want to have to make them all horizontal. I wanted to get as much texel density out of that branch as I could. So one of the pieces of the branch is vertical, and a couple of the other ones are horizontal. And so that's another reason why I just like to projection paint that one. So last tip, skin and SSS. I've got a lot of older projects that I really just want to like open up and update. And now that Substance has SSS settings in it, how cool is that? You need to be able to tell Substance that this is skin and that I need to be able to add SSS to it. So there are 3 very easy steps. First, you want to update your shader. PBR middle rough with alpha test. If you go all the way down to the bottom, really easy, just click enable. The next one is under display settings. You're going to activate subsurface scattering. Sample count by default is on 16. And last is you want to add a scatter channel under the texture set settings. So we're all used to like adding an opacity channel or adding whatever additional channel. It's just another channel, and it's called scattering. So under the layers, I added one fill layer and I turned everything else off except for scattering so that I could manipulate it by itself, because this was a project that I had already had, or I probably would have tried to introduce it into some of the layers and stuff that I had in there. So here's the genie. This is that skin that I was talking about in the very beginning from Chris Narchi that you can go and you can download. This is what it looks like by default. So just to run through a couple of the diffuse aspects of her. Here's the base, and for the most part, I added a couple of hand-painted things, but for the most part, this is that procedural shader that I downloaded for free. Watercolor brush, I went in and added a little bit of darkening to the nose, some highlights on the cheeks and the chin, like the fleshy bits. With the dots brush, I went in and just added like some hand-painted freckles on her face, and then I think I just used like the default brush to add some like, you know, little moles to the side of her cheek and the top of her head. This is the AO that came with it. Wait, did I go too far? Oh, there we go. Oh, purple veins, yeah. So like where the blood's gonna come out, like especially like in your eyes and like around your nose, like right underneath the lips, I added like a deep purple color to make it sort of look a little red. It just gives it a little something when you're hitting the render button. So here's a fill layer that's just AO. It's like a little bit of like a pink color on multiply. And I went in with a levels adjustment and really hit the contrast so that when I put it on multiply, the darker bits were darker and the lighter bits didn't really have an effect on it. Here's the SSS, which is green in the shader, and I liked the way it looks, so I kept it that way. And lastly, here's the base of the lips. A little bit of darkening up around the edges to sort of gradate it back into the skin. So here is the start. I was happy with that. Here's the start of the SSS weight map that I'm going to paint, and eventually I'm going to export this map out and put it in my scatter channel. So it started out with just 50% gray. I pretty much do that for every single channel that I make. So this is some skin patches on overlay. 5%, that's all you need, a tiny little bit. We've got, what is this? Like a darker overlay. So there's more SSS in the nose, there's more SSS coming from the chin, on the bridge, and especially up on the forehead. And here's just some breakup of freckles, like some really bigger skin pore freckles. The base of the lips that I went and painted. I just hand painted some strokes really quick up and down, and then I put a directional blur on it so that it was like a nice transition from the top of the lips to the bottom of the lips. Here are all of the channels, the final channels at the end of the day: diffuse, the skin, normals, roughness, and metallic. And here's when I ended up exporting out my scatter channel and then bringing that back in and putting it in the scatter over on the right-hand side. So it's actually hidden now. You can see in the layers over on the left-hand side. And there's the render in the viewport. And before I show you the final render, just some quick tips. And you can do this with anything in Maya, but I took the diffuse map, I fed the out color into a remap HSV and fed that into the SSS color. It's a lot more saturated and very red. And then also, I did utilize that SSS map that I painted. So I put the out alpha in the UV chord of a ramp, and then I put that ramp in the weight of the shader. And so what that's doing, and real quick on the ramp, you do have to get rid of the place 2D node for this to work. It's basically acting as a levels adjustment. So on the left-hand side of the ramp, you can see it's not all the way black. I wanted a little bit more SSS in those areas. And I also slid the white closer to the center because I wanted more SSS in the white areas. So really all the ramp is doing is acting as like a levels adjustment on top and giving me, with the IPR renderer, I was able to just kind of go in and adjust it until I really liked what it looked like. And there's the final render. Yeah, thank you. And that's it. And I'm done. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm done. And if there are any questions, I'd be willing to talk about it. And I can't see anything, so.
Hello. Awesome
Hi.
work.
Thank
I
you.
was wondering, you're a huge fan of textile density. How does overlapping, do you ever do any overlapping of UVs to save on textile density?
I think it really depends on, like, if you need these two things to be exactly the same, you can overlap these UVs, then that's fine. But since I wanted to hand paint a lot of stuff and like give things, like I want her freckles to be here, but I don't also want them to be down here. I don't usually overlap things that are like organic like that.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so my biggest thing I saw was with the leaves. Like they were all pretty much the same, you know, maybe have like 5 or 6 variations, but like to have them all, like each individual leaf as its own separate UV.
Yeah.
Like
No, I know it's a little crazy. No, I totally agree with you that I was being crazy. And unfortunately, the way that they were modeled, the leaves were part of a stem, and then like the stem was part of a bigger stem, and so there wasn't like a leaf that was the same UVs as like another one. So it was gonna be a little bit more work on my part for UVing to overlap them like that.
Just leave them. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
Oh, that's loud. I was just wondering, how do you specifically work with displacement maps that are from ZBrush? I've worked like briefly with the height maps and trying to import that as a displacement map inside Maya, but I tend to just get like a general, like a procedural output rather than like specific sculpting stuff. How do you combine the two together, or do you do that?
Are you asking, am I taking my displacement map into Painter, or, because I'm taking my displacement map into Arnold.
Straight into Arnold from ZBrush?
Yeah, straight into Arnold, putting that right into Arnold, and I think anything that is out alpha from your maps is going to be set to raw.
Okay.
If you're using 2017, I think like update 3 with the new color management in Maya. So anything out alpha is set to raw, and anything that's out color is not. Displacement map is supposed to be set to raw, and then I think like in the, what is that? It's like the second option down. Sorry, it's muscle memory. It's like you have to put it on -0.5. If you come find me later, I can show you.
Sure. And,
I just can't remember right now what
So
it's
the
called.
height map export, you don't really use at all for displacement?
Not from Substance Painter, no. I'm sure there's math to do that, and I know you can export 32-bit from Substance Painter, but I don't generally use the displacements from Substance Painter.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, fantastic work.
Thank you.
So I had a couple questions, if that's okay. One was feeding off of what one of the guys was talking about with the foliage. And is there a way to get it to where you can paint on one side of the leaf as opposed to the other side of the leaf, so that way they look different? Or is that dependent on the modeler to have two planes?
You mean like paint through it?
Like
or
whenever
have
you had
the UVs?
Yeah, the way you had the UVs all like pointed upward. Did you have it so that way you could paint on the top of the leaf as well as also the bottom?
Oh yeah, they're all, the top and the bottom were all there separately.
Oh, okay, so those
Yeah.
are like probably like two planes that were like
Yes, so like
stacked
here's
next
the
to one
leaf,
another.
and then like here was the UVs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
The question I did actually want to ask is, I noticed the texture sets or UDEMs that you were using. What's the best method of, I guess, creating those? Is it just
Creating the UDEMs?
Yeah.
Creating UDEM tiles just in general?
Yeah.
Like as opposed to like taking it in and doing it by materials?
Well, so I used to do it all to where it's just it's all just packed into just one texture set,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so I didn't know if there was. I'm just recently discovering like the idea of UDEMs
worries.
in general.
If I want to get the camera like right up on my thumb, I need enough texel density in that UV patch to do that. If I have the entire body in one, I'm not going to have enough texel density to like do a 4K render of the thumb. So I knew at the end of the day that I was going to hit the render button on these, and I did want to do close-ups on them, so I went a little crazy with texture sets.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that just a feature like Maya has built into it as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can do UDIM patches in there. There is like a transform, under the transform tab, there's just arrows where you can actually like click them over. So they're perfectly aligned
Oh, wow.
to like from
Okay.
101, 1001 to like 1002. And you can
Right.
like, checkerboard
And
them
stack
up.
them.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for giving the talk. This was really
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you for coming.
I just had one quick question. So there's one thing, I've been working in Paint for some time, and there's one thing that always kind of gives me trouble is when I'm using procedural smart masks. I wanted to, there are times where I want to be able to mask off a smart mask, and I've, like when I go into poly select and mask by UV or mask by poly, like you can't do that with a smart mask. So I was wondering if you found any workarounds to mask off essentially smart masks.
Anytime I'm making a mask on anything, I have like my fill layer, and then I'll put that fill layer into a group, and then I'll put a smart mask on that group, and then I'll put that group into another group, and then you can put another mask on top of that, and maybe add a paint layer, and then maybe do it that way.
Okay,
So
yeah.
layers,
Okay.
layers.
Are you using like the paint layer and then the fill layer within that one main layer, or are you stacking layers just in general? And then,
I think it really depends because I do instantiate a lot of things. So if I've got a fill layer and I have a smart mask on it and I want to instantiate that over, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. But if you instantiate the group, then you can't paint like specific masks on those things because they're all linked to something else. So if you put your smart mask on just the fill that's inside the group, then you should be fine.
okay, great,
And
thank
then,
you.
yeah, you can add an additional paint layer to your group in all of the texture sets and like paint them individually.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. You're welcome. Okay. Going once, going twice. All right. Cool. Thanks, guys.